Hi, I'm Carol Owens, and this is Stockbridge Updates. You know, we live in extraordinary times, and it's getting worse in some of our opinions. Maybe some people like the direction, but nobody can deny that it's very, very different. So my editorial in this issue is about what we in Stockbridge are going to do. And we could follow along with the national trends, or we could be kind of a refuge from the national trends. And I think historically we were always the second. So if we wanted to do that, what would we do? Now, you're going to think that this is a little simple-minded, but trust me, follow the golden rule. Respect one another. Listen to one another. And you know all that political jargon about misinformation and disinformation and lying and untruth? Forget all of it. We're friends and neighbors. Nobody's promulgating misinformation or disinformation. Nobody's a bad guy. We're all just human. If we made a mistake, correct it and move on. No grudges. It'll be better for all of us because in the end, all those things are demeaning and divisive, and we need each other. Now, I'm so excited because my guest for today is our state senator, Paul Mark, and he is wise and wonderful. And the best part, in my opinion, is he's funny, but he's also full of facts. Paul, welcome.
Thank you for having me. That is a very generous and fun introduction. I would say one of the nicer things anyone's ever said to me. Thank you.
Well, good, and the great part is it's all true.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm old enough to be wise, but yeah.
Or wise enough to be old, I don't know. Anyway, we have been talking in Stockbridge about the Affordable Homes Act, which, as you well know, was passed last August. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And part of it, a section, is called the seasonal communities. That's your cue. Tell the audience, what the heck are seasonal communities? Why does Stockbridge qualify to be one? And what's good about it?
Yeah, so in the Affordable Homes Act, we were trying to put together a package of funding. I think there's about $4 billion available potentially, and also policy initiatives that maybe will help every region of the entire state hopefully have something that they could go for and try to address this affordability crisis. I mean, the price of homes is getting out of control. I know I've seen the stats here in Stockbridge specifically. If you're a long-term resident or even a newer resident and you make a regular working class income, you probably can't afford anything anymore. And that is so true all over Massachusetts, and it had been an issue out east for a long time, and it's certainly crept out this way and is becoming a real problem here in the Berkshires. And so in that Affordable Homes Act, one of the designations we were able to put into the language was seasonal communities. And,
Wait, let me just stop you for 1 second there and kind of underscore something you said.
Yeah.
And that is, we now have working poor.
Oh, absolutely.
People who are employed, who are doing the darn best they can, and they can't afford it all. Rent or mortgage and food and medicine and.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
And you were trying to address that. That's wonderful.
Yeah, there's specific communities here in Berkshire County, certainly in Barnstable County out on Cape Cod, and then on the two islands, which are actually two separate counties each. There are communities where we have seasonal residents, we have seasonal employees. We work a bit different than, say, suburbs of Boston or even cities like Worcester. And so we were trying to get language into the initial bill that would allow all of Berkshire County to be designated as a seasonal community, every municipality, and the same thing for Barnstable County. Me and my counterpart on the Cape, Senator Julian Sear, we weren't able to do that, but we were able to get Berkshire and Barnstable included and have metrics that are still under development, but some of the communities here in South County, including Stockbridge, were initially designated by right, that they have the opportunity to accept this designation. You have to do it at town meeting. And what we're working on now is when we pass laws, and in the House there's 160 members, so the magic number is 81, and in the Senate there's 40, so the magic number is 21. In order to get buy-in, and we try to get as close to unanimous really as possible, sometimes some of the language ends up a little vague, and there's also this idea that I'm not in real estate, I'm not a contractor, and so maybe there are experts in the executive branch that have a better opportunity to kind of fine-tune some of the provisions of the law. And so right now we're in that process. We're going through the regulations. And so I'm a member of this Seasonal Communities Advisory Council that's a statewide group. We have members from all 4 of the affected counties, and they're from all industries. So you have some members of the legislature, but you also have like people from real estate, town officials, different backgrounds. And the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities put out draft regulations just last Friday.
Right.
And so right now we're in that comment period that if people have a chance to look at the regulations, say what they think, and send in the commentary or even send them over to me, that we can still have an opportunity to make some changes and make sure that we're tailoring this. So just...
Yeah, let me just say that this comment period ends on October 31st. So you have a whole month, because this is going to air on October 1st. Get your comments in, read the suggested regulations, and make your points. And let me just go back before you continue to something you said. You said you were able to get language in so that some municipalities in Barnstable and Berkshire counties would qualify for seasonal communities. And I think that has to do with what percent of the population is a permanent resident and what percent of the population is a seasonal resident. Could you tell me what that number is, what that percentage is? And how does having a larger number of seasonal residents affect the economy? What did you learn about that?
Right. It's residents and it's in employment factors too. And so the numbers are still under development because while Stockbridge, Beckett, a couple of other towns like qualified by right under the immediate language, we're trying to develop how do we get other communities that are in the same boat, but we're trying to play with those percentages and
right.
play
so
with
right
the factors.
Now it's 40%.
Yeah, but
okay.
we're trying to find out like what is the right spot where the impact is if you have people that are here part of the year but claiming residency in another part of the year, where do they pay the bulk of their taxes? Where do they register their car? Where do they maintain another residence? Where do they count for purposes of census? There's a lot of elements that go into this, and all of those elements affect the funding that comes to communities like Stockbridge, like other places in the Berkshires, and even representation. Like we were talking before we started the show, I have 57 cities and towns. Boston has 5 or 6 senators because the way the census counts, we showed a decrease in population, and we have to all have about the same number of people. So recognizing that and recognizing that there's seasonal employment, so there's people that are coming here to work because there's jobs available for certain parts of the year, and they're not sticking around. What the problem is a community like Stockbridge maybe is missing out on funding or is making itself vulnerable unintentionally, that if there's an abundance of rentals and short-term rentals, then that becomes attractive for people not from the community that maybe are looking for investment. And while investment is wonderful, it can add to that pricing issue, to add to the unaffordability of the properties that are here and available. So we're looking at, how do we best tailor this program to make sure that it's working for as many programs, for as many communities as possible. And then a thing I like that is available right now is in this first fiscal year where the Affordable Homes Act exists, there's $2 million that is designated for programs for the communities that have accepted the seasonal communities designation. So Stockbridge, I'm correct in saying they did say yes, right?
No, they haven't voted
yet.
yet.
They haven't yet. Okay.
It's under discussion at the committee and the Affordable Housing Trust level.
Got it.
And then a recommendation will go, like, for example, from the trust to the select board.
Okay.
And the select board will be aware of that when they put the vote on the warrant for town meeting.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if I know Beckett didn't accept it yet, so I wasn't sure about Stockbridge. So an incentive that they're trying to get communities that are eligible to join is there's a $2 million pool right now. And if there's only 3 communities that have accepted it, that means $3 million or $2 million in programming is going to be available for a pool of only 3 communities. And so the idea is early on, if we get in on this and we find grant programs that are tailored, good ideas are certainly welcome right now, then there's going to be the availability of some kind of funding to either create housing, help true us up to standing we would have matching other communities that aren't facing this kind of struggle that we're facing.
Because the cost of many things in, for example, Stockbridge, and principally land and real estate, on land that hasn't been built on and land that has been built on, are affected by the fact that so many people come in from outside. Individuals that want to be here in the summer, for example, but also, as Paul was saying, investors who see a real market for short-term rentals in a real way. And that causes prices to rise as a function of a temporary population rather than the prices being lower as a function of just the full-time buyers.
Right.
I want to talk about a couple things in those proposed regulations that bother people, okay?
Good timing.
Okay, so just going to talk about tiny homes and tiny lots for a minute. Now, you may or may not remember, but tiny homes are permissible in Stockbridge right now. That is, our bylaws don't demand that you build a house of any particular size. But tiny lots, now, there's an issue. Some people have said for a long time, gee whiz, the fact that Stockbridge only has 2-acre and 4-acre zoning is one of the variables that keeps land prices so high. And maybe we should have smaller lots permissible. Then the interesting thing is that I want to make sure I have this correct. Right now, in the proposed regulations, you just have to reduce the bylaw, the size of the lots in the zoning bylaws by 25% to qualify to meet the definition of tiny lot. Now, if you have 2 and 4 acre zoning, that means 3 3/4 could be a tiny lot. It means that 1 3/4 acre could be a tiny lot. Now, am I understanding that right? And how are you seeing this work out?
Well, it's actually interesting because sometimes a person is able to buy land and it might be what looks like a big lot, but because of the way tiny homes work and because of how unaffordable it can be to build a new home or to even go like the modular route, the manufactured route, there is actually opportunity. People that want a smaller place to live, they want something that's like what they're calling these tiny homes. There's potential that even adopting something like that on a bigger lot would still be having the effect of helping new housing be produced and new housing be available. There is definitely a movement around for downsizing.
And what I love is that that works for every age group.
Yeah.
It could be a single young person
Oh, yeah.
who doesn't want to be in their parents' basement anymore and is perfectly happy with 400, 450 square feet.
Right.
It could be an older person who doesn't want to take care of the family home and the acre lot anymore, who wants to live more simply and smaller. So this meets needs at both ends of the age scale.
Yeah, trying to be more flexible and less rigid without changing the nature of a community, I think is really important, because the way people look at housing is different. The way people make money, we were saying earlier, amounts of yearly income that sound like a lot are increasingly not enough to get ahead. Like, they might be enough to survive, but you're making a decent paycheck, but the cost of everything is just going up and up. And you were talking about, like, the new administration. I kept hearing these promises of inflation going down, and I'm not seeing it. Everything, I go to the grocery store, I can't get out of the grocery store for less than $50, and it's just me. and I like to eat, but I don't like to eat that much or that fancy. And having more options, I think, is really important. And then when you're talking about parents and young people and just families of multiple generations, maybe instead of buying like a larger home and having you take a room or you take the basement. I remember once my family, we lived with my grandparents, and we were on the first floor and they were on the second. Maybe something better would be, how about we have this tiny home and there's a main house and you live here, maybe on the same property, some kind of an accessory dwelling unit, or maybe it's your own property, but it's in the same plot. So, like, I own 3 acres in Beckett, and if I could potentially, like, someday sell an acre of that to a nephew who wanted to do something like that. Right. I mean, you know, there's potential, thinking about the future and thinking about just how the nature of what people see as what they want out of life is definitely different.
I just love your suggestion that we simply be more flexible. You know, take for an example, in the last Affordable Housing Trust meeting, it was very, very interesting, because it was stated by one of the members, Jan Ackerman, who's a longtime member. She's an original member of the trust. And she said that what she found in her researchers is, after a certain age, the primary choice for older Americans is assisted living. Nobody likes it, but lots of people need it. And then Bruce Arbach, who was also an original member of the Affordable Housing Trust, offered that he lives in a duplex with his daughter and son. I don't know which one is the in-law and which one and their 2 children. It's a duplex. They each have their own entrance, a door that can be closed. They each have a piece of the yard, a designated piece of the yard. And yet, that proximity allows them to live multi-generationally and is an alternate to assisted living. Right.
No, my family, we've lived this. When my father died very unexpectedly, it's been 13 years ago now, my mother couldn't afford the house they lived in, and so I ended up buying a new house myself, giving her my old house, and then at a moment that didn't work, and so then she moved in with me into the same house, and then when my sister and her husband had a baby, they built an addition onto their home, and then she moved in with them. But it's she has her own door if she wants, she has her own living space, she has her own bathroom, all of that, but she's part of the family. She feels functional. She feels productive. She helps watch the not a baby anymore now the toddler who's starting kindergarten, and it was what we all could afford, because affordability was a major problem when people plan for the future, but maybe not that well. And my father was only in his late 50s, and it was very unexpected, and it caused a major financial hardship. And that was how we were able to adjust, was by us being very flexible. So yeah, the more options that are available for people that want to try to work around something like this, I think it's important.
And the multi-generational aspect is so enriching. You know,
Yeah.
I grew up in a very, very different time. The major population, it was a bell curve. The smallest number of people were very poor, and the smallest number of people were very rich, and most people were middle class. I lived a bike ride from my granny, you know, and interaction with multi-generational family was common. Sundays, we all sat around the table, from the little ones to the oldest ones. And that was a great part of my childhood. Then, because of lots of stuff, the highway system that was built in the 50s, the increased mobility, jobs being centered away from, you know, not evenly distributed throughout the country, people moved. And that family contact broke down. Now, this is a lovely way to bring it back together. And it may be responding to the economics, but gee whiz, it's fun for people. My gran was the most fabulous human being. And my life would have been less if I couldn't get on my blue Schwinn and go see Granny whenever I felt like it.
Yeah.
You know, it was really wonderful.
Yeah, it is, and it builds community. It builds a sense of belonging. I think it is important, and yeah.
You know, that conversation at the Affordable Housing Trust meeting was really very interesting. I'll share another piece of it with you and get your reaction. The chair is Patrick White. You know Patrick. And he was talking about being able to build a tiny home for about $120,000. Now, compare that to a building lot in Stockbridge, which is $150,000, and then a not tiny home is about $500 per square foot. Now you're at $650. Thank you very much. And $650 is unaffordable for many, many people. $120 is affordable. Well, somebody at the meeting said, yeah, but how long can you live in 450 square feet? Can you, you know, what if you're single, then now you're a couple, and what if your wife gets pregnant? You know, where are three people going to go in 400? And that may be true. But Patrick made the point that this is a way to get on the economic escalator. There's another single person that wants your $120,000 tiny house. He or she will move in. You'll buy a family home with the down payment you just got by selling your tiny house. These things create upward mobility, and we're just a little, I think, economically stagnated where nobody can move. Now, I don't know, correct me or fill me in on that.
No, I think that's one of the most basic ways that the average working person builds wealth is by home ownership. And so regardless of the size of the home, if you're able to build equity, if you're able to then, when you make the sale, have that down payment, like you're saying, to move into something bigger. I mean, we've always heard about starter homes, right? So a starter home doesn't have to be a minimum of 1,400 feet. It can be something smaller. And single people also want to build equity, and they want to have the ability to, like you said, climb that escalator of into the American dream.
We should provide that. We really should. Okay, we only have 2 minutes left.
That was fast.
I know, because you're just... Did I promise you? He's interesting and he's jovial. We're lucky to have you, seriously. Now, I just want to tie in another thing. You may know I'm a retired doctor, and, you know, medical and mental health services were my life and very important to me, and we're failing big time in the country, not just in rural areas and not just in this area, but nationwide. How does the housing thing, seasonal communities, Affordable Homes Act, how does that interplay with bringing something as important as ambulances, EMTs, medical professionals? How does that interface?
I mean, that's interesting even because part of why it's hard to recruit and retain talent is affordability. And so if you had smaller units that were available for people coming here from out of the region or even out of state, once you get here, once you start working, once you realize you love the community, you're enjoying going out and hiking and doing whatever it is people enjoy doing, you get kind of, I don't want to say trapped, it's good trapped, golden handcuffs. You want to be here. And no, making affordable housing is definitely a way to keep our economy growing, and that is definitely going to help. I had a conversation with the Breen Center last week, and one of their biggest challenges is keeping talent because it is extremely expensive, and social workers don't necessarily make a lot of money. And we talked about maybe developing an incentive to get people. If you buy a home, you get a certain amount of money. If you rent a home and you're coming from out of the area, you get a certain amount of money. And then loan forgiveness programs as well. But like they all tie into a total package of people want to be in Massachusetts, probably more now than ever, because great education, welcoming community. We got a lot going for us. But the biggest roadblock we have right now, and it's not limited to housing, but housing is certainly a major factor, is affordability. It is a very expensive place to live, but if we can work together as communities and in partnership to build opportunities for people to be here, they're gonna love it and they're gonna stay.
Well, I trust you.
Well, good. I appreciate
I trust you to go forth and do good on our behalf. And God bless you for having something like 57 towns, where Boston is reversed and has like 7 representatives. Folks, it's because our population is so small that this poor man has to run around an enormous geographic area to have the same population as some of the urban areas. And we thank you so much for it. And you come back anytime.
I would love to. Thank you so much.
Okay.